Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Wade Watches. I'm Wade, and today, moving right along with my Black Movies Matter Black History Month series, I'm going to be reviewing Black Panther from 2018 because how could I not? Directed by Ryan Coogler and starring the late Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace, Michael B. Jordan, Letitia Wright, Lupita Nyong'o, Danai Gurira, Daniel Kaluuya, Angela Bassett, Forrest Whitaker, and Martin Freeman and Andy Serkis. Oof, what a mouthful! This is a huge ensemble movie, and everybody actually played. Oh, and Winston Duke. See, I knew I was going to forget somebody. A lot of characters in this movie that all feel important, actually. So I had to. I felt obligated to name them all. So, a little bit of story time for you all. When Black Panther first came out, I of course was excited along with a lot of other people for a lot of different reasons. I was excited to get a black led superhero movie on this epic of a scale. We've had black superhero movies before, Black Panther with black leads, of course, but on nothing that on this large of a scale that incorporated these elements of fantasy and science fiction on this big of a scale with this big of a budget, Marvel Studios budget. But I was so sure that Disney and Marvel were probably thinking to themselves, as long as they put black people front and center on in this movie, they wouldn't have to try hard with the script or the story. I was so sure that they would half-ass it because these dumb Negroes will go out and see anything with black people in it. And don't let's not kid ourselves. I'm not going to name names, but there are movies that exist for that, solely for that reason, that are of inferior quality. And I was sure that Black Panther would fall victim to that, but it didn't. It's a really solid story, and in my opinion, nothing short of one of the best movies in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, because it is such a solid story that doesn't require that you watch any of the Marvel movies prior to it. It stands on its own, and it's not all about the action and Black Panther whooping ass. That's actually the least exciting element of this movie. It's the characters, it's the character dramas that really make this movie work for me and still continues to hold up because of that. So, brief synopsis. This is all about King T'Challa returning to Wakanda after the events of Captain America's Civil War to claim his right to the throne. But he's very conflicted about how to best rule Wakanda. And as the events of this movie begin to unfold, he becomes more and more confused as to what's best for his people, what's best for the nation of Wakanda. And that's pretty much the synopsis in a nutshell. Threats arise, he has to deal with them, but it all comes back to that central character conflict. And this movie wouldn't have worked without a director like Ryan Coogler, who's really good at making character dramas, again, movies that first and foremost go right back to the people featured in them as opposed to the actions. And every character in this movie is interesting. There is not a single character in Black Panther that I felt boring or generic or cliche. That they're just there. Everybody has a compelling story. Everybody truly has a compelling motivation. Nobody was there just to be the comic relief or the asshole. Everybody is there for a reason and a purpose. And I can't really say that about a lot of MCU movies out there. Not that all the characters in the other Marvel movies are trash, but out of all of them that exist, honestly, this is the one where I found all of the characters the most intriguing and interesting, just because the kingdom of Wakanda is one of the most interesting concepts to exist in this universe, in my opinion. The idea of this hidden nation in the continent of Africa that's so technologically advanced and so beyond their years, that kind of has this isolationist policy of hiding their wealth from the outside world, is just really intriguing to me. And it's really brought to life on the silver screen in a spectacular way by everybody involved. um just cheers all around to everything ranging from the acting in this movie to the soundtrack to the costume design, just brings this world to life in a very beautiful way that still holds up. I still love looking at this movie to this day. It hasn't lost any of its appeal for me. It's definitely one of the most rewatchable movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And no, not just because it's a black movie and not just because I'm black do I love this movie. And if you honestly think that, because that truly insults my intelligence to think that I can pray that just because I praise a black led movie, it just has to be because I too am black. Like, fuck you if you think that. But moving on from assholes who do think like that, and that was actually something I was told when I said I love this movie when it came out. Moving on from that negative shit. Those are some of the main reasons why Black Panther works for me, but it's not without its flaws. And the main thing that prevents this from being a perfect movie for me is the pacing of it. This definitely feels like it was meant to be a 3-hour epic, because this is the first time we're seeing Wakanda, in its entirety. It was featured in the post-credit scene in Captain America Civil War, but this is the first time we're seeing it, and it definitely feels like there's a lot of lore here, a lot of world building, and I don't really feel like the 2-hour 10-minute runtime of this movie was enough to fully flesh all of this out and all these characters. Some stuff just feels like a bit rushed and kind of like shoehorned in. And there is a plot point that feels like it's going to be like kind of still to this day, after I watched this movie several, like dozens of times since seeing it in theaters in 2018 originally, it feels like the plot point that opens up this movie, like kind of the main conflict that gets the action going, it's going to be a bigger deal than it is. Then that just goes away, and somebody who has a gap in screen time, like they're there for the beginning of the movie and then they just vanish for a while and then they come back, they pretty much hijack everything. Not that I don't love it, and if you've seen the movie you know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to say it because you know how I like to keep things vague, and it's that stuff is all good, that stuff is all awesome, but honestly I feel like Black Panther would have been even better if they had just picked either one of these to run with. You can have two of them in there, but again, if you're going to have these two things in the movie, this needed to be at least 3 hours. But with 2 hours and 10 minutes, I felt like they did what they did. They kind of make it like out to be a twist, but they kind of show, they kind of showed it in the trailer. So it's not really a big surprise. So I'm like, why do that? Why do that? It still all works in the grand scheme of things, because again, this is first and foremost a character-led movie and not like an action-driven movie. So it's not too annoying, but it is the biggest flaw in this movie, in my opinion. This plot point that seems like it's a bigger deal, then they get disregarded, and then a whole other plot point just rises up, and now all of a sudden the whole movie is about this. Again, story wise, it's justified. They do justify it and all that good stuff, but it is still a bit jarring even to this day. But thankfully, it's all rounded out because the acting is solid, the performances are solid, and the themes discussed, the motivations of some of the characters, I found relatable. Even the antagonist in the movie, Killmonger, I found his motivation very relatable, and I found him, as ruthless as he is, to be a sympathetic character. So it's all good at the end of the day. It doesn't really take away too much from my enjoyment of this movie as a whole. So wrapping it up, because this is honestly still one of the best movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for me, because I do enjoy watching this movie I love it just a bit more every time I watch it because it has a great visuals, great costumes, really solid costumes, a really great soundtrack, which is honestly one of the best soundtracks in the MCU, and some solid action sequences. Like, yeah, some of the CG, especially near the end, is a bit off, but it's not as bad as people have made it out to be. Like, I just watched the movie, I didn't notice the god awful CGI, just kind of like mid level CGI. And I don't care because the story's so good, and I actually understood why everybody's fighting, and it still has solid action sequences for me. Both the one at the end, especially the waterfall fights in the middle. Because of all of that, I'm gonna still give Black Panther a 9.5 out of 10. Believe me, if it wasn't for kind of like, kind of the questionable pacing and the kind of weird handling of these two big plot points, it would be a perfect 10 out of 10 movies. But as it stands, it's a 9.5 out of 10, and it's still one of my favorite movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So yeah, I really love Black Panther. If you still haven't seen it to this day, please check it out. Please watch it. It's worth it. Don't buy into the hype that only black. Don't buy into the hype. Don't buy into the ignorant statement that some still continue to perpetuate to this day, that you can only enjoy it if you're a person of color. I mean, of course, it means a lot to a lot of us black folks because we've never seen anything like this on this grand of a scale. The representation, the deeper messages of this movie that do appeal to a lot of black people on this scale. But if you like good movies in general, good superhero comic book movies, you should still be able to get something out of this. So check Black Panther out if you haven't seen it already. This has been another edition of Wade Watches, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.